Hey everyone, welcome to another episode in the Crypto Setups Podcast where we interview builders in the entire blockchain space. And today I have a friend that I know who has been working in this space, TJ, but he's the first time appearance on Crypto Setup. So TJ, why don't you introduce yourself and tell a bit about your backstory and how long you've been working in the space and what you do?
For sure. Once again, thanks for having me on, Fez. Always great to talk to you. So I'm TJ. I work with the Lydia Labs team. Lydia Labs is a crypto native venture studio building multiple products. And specifically on the team, I'm the lead for a product we're building called Liquid Finance, which is a liquid staking protocol on the Archway blockchain. So, kind of taking a step back, a bit of my background. I got started in the industry in early 2017, which is similar to a lot of people actually, which was more on the sidelines, learning about the industry, investing a bit, and really didn't get more involved until 2020. So around COVID time, I had a bit more time on my hands. DeFi summer was going, and I decided to dive a bit more like head first into the industry. And that kind of resulted in me joining the Icon Foundation. Icon's a layer one blockchain focused on interoperability. And that was in May of 2021, I believe. So a little over 2 years ago. With Icon, I was doing a multitude of things. So I was helping lead our decentralized grant system called the CPS. Was also helping a bit on the biz dev side of things for like interoperability integrations, and then finally doing a bit of core blockchain stuff. Um, Early last year is when I transitioned into the Lydia Labs team, and that was specifically to focus on liquid finance. And yeah, so that's kind of brought us to where we are today.
Okay, cool. So Liquid Finance is the DApp, and it's launched on the Archway blockchain. So before we jump into the DApp, can we talk about Archway? Because I know like there's a new blockchain every day. It's being spun up, whether it's using the Cosmos SDK or it's a layer two or something that's going on. Uh, but Archway's a little different. And I kind of was hoping to pick your brain so you could tell us what Archway is and what they're doing different versus other chains.
Yeah, Archway is different, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to build on Archway. Um, at its core, Archway is a layer one blockchain built on the Cosmos SDK, so it's part of the Cosmos ecosystem. But more specifically, it's focused on incentivizing developers and just incentivizing dApps and teams for utilizing the blockchain. So I believe the slogan for Archway now is like capture the value that you create.
Mm,
And at its core, this really hits home for a team and a development team when you're thinking about like incentives for your protocol. And they do this through their value capture engine, which kind of has three core components. And it's based on the usage of the smart contracts that you deploy to the network. So, not getting too far into like blockchain economics, but obviously, a blockchain is able to accrue value to the network by generating transactions and filling up their block space, like commoditizing their block space. And Archway really aims to help incentivize developers and teams that are essentially achieving this for their network. So they're essentially giving rewards back
mm,
for bringing utility to the network. And so, kind of getting into the value capture engine, there's three components. The first component is through Archway inflation. So, I believe 25% of all Arch inflation is allocated towards dApp developers. And this is, I believe, distributed on like a block by block basis, or at least attributed on a block by block basis. So if there's no transactions in a block, the 25% of inflation, I believe, goes to a dApp treasury that
mm.
can be utilized for a lot of things like incentivizing the ecosystem, for hackathons, incentivized campaigns, and so on and forth. But if there are transactions in that block, part of that inflation would go to the team or the smart contract that actually, the transaction was submitted on. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like one core component. Um, the second core component is a gas fee rebate. So 50% of all the transaction fees that are spent on a smart contract is given back to the team who developed that smart contract. So if you spent $1 transaction to submit your transaction to the blockchain, then 50 cents of that transaction goes back to the developer. So uh, yeah,
Is this you mean like as a user, if the user's using that smart contract to interact with that smart contract, 50% of the fee goes to the developer?
correct.
Or
So
yeah.
typically, a user, say for Liquid Finance, if you staked your tokens and paid one Arch fee uh, for staking,
Mm-hmm.
then zero point 0.5 Arch would go to the validators of the network. I think
Yeah.
eventually that will be burned by the network, but then the other zero point 0.5 Arch goes to our team for essentially creating those smart contracts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So essentially, yeah, it's a gas fee rebate that can be utilized in multiple different ways. But that's like the second component. And then final component of this value capture engine is a smart contract premium, which is very unique, and it can be utilized in a lot of different ways. But essentially, what it is developers can actually attach an additional like fixed fee or fixed amount to a transaction. So basically, what can happen now is when a user submits a transaction that would typically cost one Arch token, but the premium for that transaction is zero point 0.1 Arch, then the user, all they see is that they're paying a transaction fee of 1.1 Arch.
Mm.
And what's cool about this from like a user experience perspective is that this is like baked directly into the transaction. So if you're using like the Kepler wallet and you're signing for a transaction, you'll just see that you're paying 1.1. But on the back end, the development team is getting this additional premium that can be set for a multitude of reasons, such as like
Yeah.
offsetting operational costs and having like a more sustainable revenue stream.
Okay, makes sense because it makes it so it makes it very attractive for teams building, but it also my quick takeaway after you've given that explanation is a team doesn't have to because at the moment when new dApps pop up, it seems the rush is get a token out, and usually the token means it's a form of fundraising, to keep the team, give it a bit of roadmap and fund further building. But this setup gives the team a bit of space because they could buffer a little bit of fees into that transaction because anyway they're getting it back with the 50% if the dApps use smart contract, but then bake in an additional tiny fee that gives them a bit more of an income as long as they are users using their dApp. So
100%.
okay.
Like this is like literally what we're doing at Liquid Finance in itself. Like
Yeah.
we don't have a governance token that we can use for liquidity mining, which is pretty traditional to help bootstrap an early product, like you were saying.
Hmm.
But alternatively, we're able to use these Archway like value capture engine rewards to incentivize liquidity and usage of our protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And what becomes pretty cool about this is when you're thinking about in the industry, we love to talk about like flywheels, like a positive feedback loop of, if you get usage of your protocol, those smart contracts will generate some type of rewards.
Hmm.
And then you can bring those rewards and distribute them back into the protocol to incentivize more usage,
Yeah.
uh, which brings in more users, brings in more transactions, giving you more rewards and kind of creating this loop of growth, which, typically isn't available unless you are launching a token, right? If we didn't have a token, we would not be able to do that. So that's what makes it really unique and allows us to kind of innovate on the incentives layer of a protocol itself.
Cool. Now, a bit of a random question here, but with everything you've explained, on the other side of the scale, though, is there concerns? And I know you don't work for Archway or anything, but generally you've been interacting uh, with and building on the chain. Is there concerns if a dApp launches and they bake in ridiculous fees into the transactions, like and a user doesn't pay attention because it's all, it's just standard process. You start clicking, like the airdrop, for example. I experienced this where I looked at the fees and I was like, oh, this looks quite high for a new chain, etc. Is there worries or is there anything to mitigate some of that where a dev team can't come in, like spin up a fork and just load it with additional fees to get users to
Yeah,
accidentally hit accept?
yeah, I think that's obviously a great question because I think kind of what you're getting at is essentially a product that doesn't usually have those fees and getting usage, and then all of a sudden like flipping a switch and having say like $100 transaction fee,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I don't think at its core, or the network could probably decide to vote on like some implementation or some like cap to what a smart contract premium can actually be set
Okay.
at.
Yeah.
um, I'm not super technical, so I'm assuming that that's something that could happen. But from the other perspective, you know one, it's on the user to ensure that they're not paying a ridiculous transaction like
Yeah.
that. But two, I do think that some of these service providers like wallets should be able to recognize if a transaction fee is like ridiculous compared
Mm.
to any other interaction on the chain, and they should either be able to just revert the transaction right away,
Yeah.
or just like display some notification to the user that like, are you sure you want to pay $100 for
Yeah.
one transaction? So
Yeah.
but I do think that's a really good question, and it is a very early ecosystem. So I
Mm.
assume that these type of discussions will be happening on like the governance forum, and like how can we really progress the chain and find all these little niche cases
Yeah.
for being a sustainable blockchain.
Yeah. No, cool. And I threw you on the spot there. Great answer. Okay, so we're here to talk about liquid finance. So let's jump into that now. What is liquid finance? Can you give us an overview?
Yeah, Liquid Finance is a non-custodial liquid staking protocol
Mm-hmm.
deployed natively on the Archway blockchain. I think being native to Archway is kind of cool for us because we actually participated in the Archway incentivized testnet over a year ago. I think it was like last April, and we won a prize for building Liquid Finance on their testnet. So
Mm-hmm.
we've been in the Archway ecosystem for about as early as possible, building and building Liquid Finance specifically. In terms of like Liquid Finance and what it is, so with liquid staking, there's this kind of this trade-off for people typically in a proof of stake blockchain, where you can stake your tokens and receive staking rewards, which come from like security provisions or like inflation from the network.
Mm.
But in doing so, you lock your tokens and lock your liquidity. On the other side of things, you can keep your tokens liquid and you can pay for transaction fees, you can participate in DeFi, make trades, buy NFTs, and so on and forth. But they were at one point mutually exclusive. Now with liquid staking, you're essentially able to do both, and this is done by essentially depositing your token into the protocol, which stakes them for you, and then in turn you receive this liquid staking token, which is like a representation of your deposit, and that liquid staking token is fungible. It's liquid. It can be used across the ecosystem as collateral. It can be used to trade and so on and so forth. So you're kind of mitigating that opportunity cost while still being able to accrue staking rewards.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned, like, we spent a bit of time just earlier talking about this. So you're not going down the token model pathway with liquid finance, right? Because Archway gives you the ability to do things a bit differently. So there's no expected token or no token associated apart from when you use the actual DApp. You turn your Archway into what does it turn into? What's the new token?
SARCH.
S Archway,
Yeah,
right?
staked
Of course.
arch.
Staked Archway. So is
Liquid
there
staked
any?
arch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Any other token as part of the game plan for the DApp, or no?
No, so SArch is the only token. What it is a representation of your share of the staked arch in the pool. and it can be redeemed for the underlying Arch tokens as well as any interest earned at
Yeah.
any time. And what's kind of nice about it as well is that it's not a speculative token in
Mhm.
nature. It's strictly based on this representation that you can always exchange it for that underlying amount. So
Yeah.
there's no speculation involved. It's just essentially almost like a wrapper.
Yeah, because what's happening is the users taking it and they're getting this representation, but in the background, that archway is actually getting staked. So my question there is, where does it get staked at the moment? Does it go to a certain node operator? Does it get shared across all
Yeah,
validators? How's that piece work?
yeah, that's a good question. We built like our initial architecture to stake it to 5 validators.
Okay.
So this is a set of validators that we think are like very reputable within the
Mhm.
Cosmos ecosystem and very trustworthy. And this is kind of important because if you think about, the possibility of getting slashed on a network for, double signing or not being actively participating in block production, not only does the validator get punished, but those that have their stake delegated to that validator get punished as well.
Mm.
So, especially in like this early ecosystem like Archway, we wanted to be very confident that we had very experienced node operators that we could delegate to. Obviously, in the future, we can explore pathways to increase that validator set, to have
Yeah.
some algorithm that spreads it across a wide variety. But we wanted to be really flexible early on and like confident in our set. So that's where the state uh,
Yeah.
arch in the protocol goes.
Cool, cool. And just for everyone listening, right at the end when we're done chatting and I'm done picking TJ's brain, we're gonna quickly run through a tutorial of Liquid Finance and just show everyone how things work and what does what. So definitely stay on.
Stick around, yeah.
And yeah, yeah. But okay, I'm still not done yet. So this is great. Then the other part, you gave a couple of examples, but let's talk about the liquid staking component. So the token you get back, S Arch,
Hmm.
as you said, like now it's not locked, right? You're still earning your staking rewards. So like you would
Yes.
normally stake, you don't. You've got this unlocked token, and all of a sudden you've got a new chain where new dApps are starting to launch. I've seen PeerSwap. I think there's one other one. I know there's another application called Balance on the way that will enable you to take this SArch as collateral and mint a stable coin, which is kind of you
Hmm.
make a DAO stuff we've seen in the DeFi one, the initial DeFi launch. So, is there any other examples you can give to help everyone capture what the potential this unlocks for the chain?
Yeah, I think at its core, like when we talk about the potential of liquid staking, previously DeFi had to compete with like 50% or like 60% of a network's circulating supply being staked and locked.
Mm, mm,
So that's like an entire portion of assets that can now be like possibly introduced as liquidity into DeFi,
yeah,
which is big for even just like the depth of liquidity for like rates and all those types of things. But kind of what you're getting at in terms of utility specifically, I think Archway is obviously a very early ecosystem, and even like liquid staking and Cosmos in general is pretty new, and we're seeing a
mm,
lot of things pop up, such as like dexes that use liquid staking tokens as like the base pairs to make them a bit more efficient. But what I kind of like to do and like have been observing specifically is the Ethereum ecosystem. I
mm,
think they're obviously leading the innovation for like the like LSDFi is what they're calling it.
yeah,
Um, and some of the cool applications that we've saw have just been like yield bearing stable coins, which use liquid staking tokens as collateral,
mm,
and they're able to capture some of that staking yield and actually pass that on to the stablecoin holder. Another cool thing that's being done is I think it's basically like bond stripping. So like separating a token's principal from its
mm,
yield. And this introduces like interest rate swaps. And even in general, you can build like structured products around it, like tranches and
yeah,
a bunch of different, it's just like essentially opens up like the entire fixed income market of like traditional finance. So um, this was like all happened in like the past couple months with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the new Ethereum upgrade of unlocking staking has been like kind of like the catalyst for this. So
Mm.
we're seeing a lot of trickle downs into other ecosystems and Cosmos included. And we hope to innovate as well on the application layer in Archway.
Yep. Fantastic. And so at the moment, we've got Archway, the native chain token.
Hmm.
You support that. Do you envision supporting as more applications launch and we see a bit of similar tokens where they have a principal slash uh, yield component? Do you see Liquid Finance assessing and hopefully integrating some of these projects
Yeah,
as well?
yeah. So I think um, even at like that stage of things, that Liquid Finance almost becomes like a middleware product where
Mm,
it's kind of sitting in between the blockchain and the application layer, and basically kind of allows these new protocols, like we were just talking about, to be built on top of
mhm.
Liquid Finance. So I don't really envision us changing Liquid Finance too much to like accommodate these different protocols.
Yeah,
Rather, we'll work with builders who want to create these different products, or we'll build them ourselves on top
yeah,
and start to really build out the SRH utility. So
yeah.
um, I think keeping it simple and just helping build this specifically like the depth of liquidity for SRH is kind of like our main priority right now.
Yeah.
And then obviously we'll start to explore additional utilities down the road.
Cool. So for everyone that doesn't know TJ, like he has dropped alpha just then, in his words that, or we build it ourselves. But yeah, he's just being coy there. Okay, thanks, TJ. Appreciate that. Okay. Is there
Nice catch.
anything else that we haven't captured as part of Liquid Finance? I feel we've done quite a detailed run through of everything, but I want to throw over to you. Is there anything you want to talk about you feel we haven't discussed?
Yeah, I think there's a couple possible things to like continue to talk about, but in general, I think like some of these things can be touched on upon in the tutorial, like
Yep.
what is instant unstaking, what's our instant
Yep.
unstaking queue, and those types of things. But I do think like one key aspect that I'd just like to kind of put out there in general about when we talk about like us being Archway native and being like focused specifically on the Archway network, I think that's pretty important. A lot of protocols are, especially in Cosmos, like try to capture a lot of different ecosystems or try to, uh, you know, run their own chain. And I think that
Mm,
these kind of actually introduce uh, a lot of problems in a way. Like if we were to run our own chain, we'd have to be worried about like the technical competence of getting it running and then
mhm,
maintaining it. And we'd have to worry about like the economic factors of not being attacked with a governance token, 50%, 51% attack, those types of
mm,
things. And then also you just kind of have to rely on like IBC and the relayers, the liveness of them constantly passing the assets back and forth. So what being built directly on Archway allows us to do is actually utilize this security and this blockchain infrastructure that Archway is providing to us, and we're
mm,
actually getting rewarded for doing so with their value capture engine. And then this allows us to focus specifically on making our product as best as possible, focus on all of our incentives going towards increasing the liquidity of SRH token. And
mm.
in general, like we can specifically listen to the Archway ecosystem, observe how it evolves, and then kind of cater our protocol to that. So I think that's pretty important, and kind of like why I like to talk about why one we built Liquid Finance on Archway and why we'll continue to support it in the future.
Yep. No, cool. That's a good call out. And yes, I should have actually picked your brain about the unstaking part, which we will cover in the tutorial. But let's just segue before we go into the tutorial. Talk about this because we've zoned in on um, traditional staking is if you lock it, there's always an unstaking period, right? Like it can be 10, 14. I don't know with Archway, what is it? 21 days?
Yeah, it's typical in Cosmos SDK chains for it to be 21 days.
Yep. Cool. So you got that component, and then liquid staking gives you, this token you can move around and use. But there is the aspect of eventually at some point you may want to go, hey, it's been a year, uh, and you want
Yeah.
to take in your 10% that you've earned or whatever the current rate is, and you want to unstake it. And this is where Liquid Finance, again, if you've used it, gives you options, right? You can go down the
hmm
traditional, wait the certain amount of days and get your unlocked Archway tokens back, or you can instantly swap it to Archway with a small fee attached. Is that correct?
Correct. So
Yeah.
specifically within our protocol, like you said, there's two options. You can do like a traditional unstaking, where the maximum amount of time that you would unstake is that traditional unbonding time. It's actually a bit
Mhm.
more, but that's based on some like technicalities of what the Cosmos SDK allows, which is in our documentation if someone wants like a specific explanation about that.
Yeah.
But we have it displayed as like a max unbonding period because um, what Liquid Finance actually does is it takes in new Arch deposits as well as it'll take any claimed Arch staking rewards and actually match them with these unstaking requests before staking them back in the protocol. So basically, what this allows you to do is, if the protocol is getting new deposits, or if it's continually generating these staking rewards, you actually have a better chance of being like liquid out of your unstaking position a lot quicker than that 25-day period.
Yeah.
So that's why we say it is the max.
Okay.
And then like alternatively, you have this instant unstaking option, which is essentially a swap between SArch into Arch tokens,
Mhm.
and that's a 1% fee, and based on there being enough liquidity available in the queue. So there are some caveats with that, but at the same time, we're basically incentivizing liquidity for that queue. So usually there should be enough available.
Okay. And my question right off that is, how are you incentivizing that liquidity with what?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's two ways that we're doing this. We take like a 10% commission off of staking rewards, which is like
Mhm.
very common for liquid staking protocols. And the majority of those rewards are just being sent directly into incentivizing the liquidity providers in that instant unstaking
Okay.
queue. But in addition, usually protocols would be, just giving out some governance tokens as well.
Yes.
But we're just giving out the Archway protocol rewards, so the inflation and the gas rebate.
Yeah.
What I think is like the coolest part of this whole thing, and when we're talking about like liquidity mining being bad in a way,
Mm.
is that all of the rewards that we're actually giving LPs are in the native token, in the Arch
Yeah.
token.
Yeah.
And so they already have exposure to this token as an LP. They're
Mm.
seemingly okay with that exposure by being on the Archway blockchain itself. So it makes the kind of like your reward a bit more stable and
Yeah.
predictable. You don't have to realize this value by selling the governance token. You don't need to speculate, oh, well, what if it goes up more and all of a sudden you
Yeah.
haven't earned any yield? We're just giving you more Arch tokens. That's all you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um,
No, love it. Love it.
I think it's attractive. Yeah.
Agree. Completely agree. It's something I would LP into now that I know that. Actually, truth be told, this was one part I hadn't gone through the docs because obviously this liquid staking stuff, I'm very I use
Yeah.
it on different chains. So
You're an expert.
uh, yeah, not an expert, but yeah, and they all have governance tokens. So when I saw that, it I registered in my brain. I'm like, I wonder what's the incentive here, and this is a
hmm
great use. Like to
Yeah.
get the actual core token is like a win.
Yeah. We're not creating like value out of thin air.
Bingo.
So Uh,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what we're trying to avoid. We want to have like the sustainable protocol and sustainable yield. And I think in general, that's kind of like the ethos of the Archway blockchain.
Yeah. Love it. Okay, shall we jump into the tutorial?
Let's do it.
Well, This is a first, by the way, for me, as
A
if
live
listeners would
tutorial?
know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like with someone else, everyone, you'll see all my channel is just full of tutorials. Me dishing out,
Yeah.
tutorials. I've never done this, so
Well,
here you
let's.
go, TJ.
I'm a bit more nervous. Let's hope it works. And that's my
No.
problem.
Oh no, no. Oh, you mean the DApp? Oh yeah, that's on you.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just the user, humble user.
Yeah.
Okay.
No bugs.
No bugs. I'm gonna get rid of that. Okay, so I'm straight away onto the site and I'm gonna run through the steps. So obviously the first step we're gonna do is connect the wallet.
Yeah. So quick point out
Oh,
here.
yep,
So
let's
it
do it.
says Archway wallet, and that's right now specifically Kepler.
Hmm.
That was like the first wallet integration that we did. Uh, Next week, so depending when this video comes out, it might already be out, but we'll have integrations with the Archx wallet, which is like an Archway native wallet. We'll
Yep.
have Leap wallet available as well as Cosmos Station wallet. So you'll have like four different opportunities or wallets that you can utilize the DApp on.
And there'll be 4 boxes, I'm assuming here.
Correct, with
Yeah,
the
awesome.
correct logos.
Yeah, cool. So if it's before then and you just see this, you can click on the Archway wallet and it will connect your Kepler wallet. Now, just a couple of assumptions here is you already have Archway, you've set up your wallet, you've claimed your airdrop, or you have Archway in your wallet and you've added the network via Kepler. So I've not covered these components in the tutorial that we're starting. I've just assumed you're at this stage where you have your Archway tokens and you're thinking, woohoo, new tokens, free airdrop. What can I do with it? Well, here you go. Liquid Finance is your first stop to start earning some yield. Okay, so we're connected. Next up, what am I doing here, TJ?
All right, so the first tab is just staking your Arch tokens.
Yep.
So essentially, you would type in however many Arch you would like to deposit into the protocol. You
Yep.
can choose a 25%, and it shows how much you'll receive in SArch in return. So
Yep.
I think a good call out is why you're receiving less tokens than you're depositing, right? And basically, the reason behind this is that SArch is only a representation of like a share of the protocol. So the exchange rate is basically what determines how much of the SArch token you'll receive. And the reason why you're getting less here is that one SArch token is worth more than one Arch token or represents more than one Arch token. And if you want to click on the unstake tab, I think it's probably easier to
Yep.
show that exchange rate. So yeah,
So
one
we'll
SArch right now is worth 1.005 Arch.
Yep.
And basically, when the protocol is generating staking rewards, this is displayed or given through this exchange rate. So the exchange rate will continually increase as the protocol continues to compound staking rewards. So
Yep.
we're not minting more SArch tokens, we're just gaining more Arch tokens. But you as a user don't need to worry about, oh, I'm getting less SArch. You're still getting like your fair share of the tokens.
Yep. So traditionally, you would stake and you would go and claim your staking rewards, and then you would go, "Hey, I have an extra 5," and you would restake it to so that everything's earning rewards. Over here, it's all automated. So you've got this liquid token, but in the background, every day, your and the entire stack is getting rewarded, and then that's why that value is changing off S Arch. And that's kind of what's happening. So you'll always see this going up. At no point you'll see this go down.
Yeah, I'd say the
Right?
caveat, like the
Yeah.
only reason why it would possibly go down is if we have a slashing event with our validators.
Okay.
So that would be when technically Arch would be taken out of our pool.
Yep.
And I think another benefit of liquid staking protocol is typically a user may say stake to one or two validators.
Mhm.
And so if one of those validators gets slashed, only about say 50% of your exposure to that validator, or 50% of what that slashing risk would have been is actually attributed to you.
Mhm.
Whereas with our 5 validators and eventually more validators in the future, it's more of like a diversified delegation.
Mm.
So if one of our validators gets slashed, it kind of gets socialized across stake, and it's actually um, your exposure to that slashing is a lot less.
Less. Yeah, yeah.
So
No, cool.
that's
That
like the
that's good.
caveat. But yes,
Yeah,
the exchange rate more than likely will always be going up.
yeah. Okay, so this is where you come in if you want to stake and get your S Arch. This is what the next screen is unstake. So if you have S Arch, as you can see, I have a tiny bit. If I were to think, I could unstake it, and this is where you get to pick your instant unstake, where, as TJ talked about earlier, where you pay a 1% fee. Uh, but so you don't have to wait the 25 days. You pay the 1% fee, and you go from S Arch, and you get your Archway amount. So like, I don't know if I did 10 here. You can see it's telling you, but and it's also great. What I do love about the DApp is it gives you very crystal clear kind of what your hit's going to be, right? Like at the
Yeah.
moment, I can see I'll get this, but if I wait my 25 days, I'll get that.
Yeah. So basically, like as a user, you're kind of factoring in, am I willing to pay an extra whatever, point one Arch token to have
Mm,
my liquidity instantly? For
yep,
a lot of people, that's not a big deal, and they'll say sure. But if you don't need those tokens right away, you might choose to do like a traditional on stake.
yep,
So, but yeah, that's kind of like how it's represented. If you see kind of towards the bottom, it says instant on stake available liquidity. So
mm-hmm,
right now we have 109,000 Arch tokens in the instant unstaking queue.
yep.
So as long as you're not trying to instantly unstake more than 109,000 Arch tokens, you're good to go. If
Okay.
that ever says zero, then you unfortunately won't be able to instantly unstake. We'll have to choose delayed unstake or using like a third party DApp.
Okay. So is it if this says zero, and will this option still be available, and you just wait until more liquidity is provided, or no?
The I believe the option will still be there, but
Okay.
your transaction would just revert. It'd say
Okay.
that there's not enough in the queue. So, um,
Okay.
but you wouldn't be like waiting for more liquidity there.
Yep. Cool. And then let's go over to the Q tab, and this is where you provide liquidity.
Correct. So, yeah, you would just put in however much Arch tokens you want to provide at liquidity. We
Yep.
do have like a small minimum amount that you can provide. So it's 10 Arch is the minimum amount.
Okay.
And this is just basically based on making our transact or our smart contracts a bit more optimized from a
Yep.
transaction fee perspective.
Yep.
So yeah, you would put in like 10 Arch. You would see how much you supplied down there. And then what's cool about the reward section is once you have liquidity supplied, um, that amount should increase on like a block by block basis based on how
Yep.
much art should be attributed to you.
Let's do this. So we're starting a bit non-traditionally by moving straight to the queue, but the other stuff's quite simple, and we'll go through it. So I'm going to add some liquidity, and it's giving you a bit of a warning. Okay.
Yeah, confirmation message that you know what you're doing.
Yep. Yep. I know. I'm giving you some archway. Yeah. I'm adding
Yeah,
the archway to the queue. So in the queue, it's basically taking my archway and just adding it to a pool that is archway tokens, so that when other users want to unstake it, then they get these archway tokens.
yeah, I can
Uh,
explain this a bit more in depth while you're doing this transaction. So the instant
okay.
unstaking queue basically works as a one-sided liquidity pool at its like simplest term. We
Yeah.
call it a queue because it essentially is like you're waiting in line to be swapped
Yeah.
against. So the first person to join the queue is the first person to have their arch swapped for S arch when someone wants to instantly unstake. So obviously, if you're the first in line, the next person to join is the next person to get swapped, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And yeah, while you're waiting in line, this is where you would be receiving those incentives we talked about earlier.
Hmm.
And once you're swapped against, you get 50% of that instant unstaking fee. So yeah, and I think one really cool thing about this as well is when you are swapped against, it'll say, your S arch will be claimable there at the bottom. But if you're not paying
Ah.
attention, the cool part about that is that if you forget to claim, since you're essentially own that SRH now, you're still
Hmm.
earning staking rewards.
Yeah.
So it's not like you have to be aware of it every second of the day.
Yeah.
You can still be earning rewards even if it's sitting in that
Yeah.
claimable spot. And
So
obviously,
this.
we're working with like a couple different teams as well to be able to like monitor these types of things and
Mhm.
notify you through like your mobile wallet when your rewards have been swapped against, or when your SRH has been unstaked and your
Yeah.
liquidity is available to claim. So we're definitely working on like the user experience process of this with some other teams, but right now that's how it works.
Yep. Yeah. And to clarify, so because it's a queue system, it is your Archway. It gets replaced with S Archway, and as a user, after this point, you're not earning the extra, tokens,
Correct.
the projected APY. You're just earning normal staking rewards. So if you want to take part in this liquidity providing process, you would then need to make a decision of coming to the unstake and thinking, well, do you want to put that 1% hit or go through the traditional part of 25 days and then re-add it to the liquidity pool, if that is your um, plan of,
Yeah.
generating yield?
Yeah, correct. And I think one like last call out on this for like the liquidity providing, because you're 100% correct,
Yeah.
is if you want to join the pool again, you'd have to find a way to get that SArch into Arch again to
Mm-hmm.
re-provide it. One cool feature that we're going to be adding probably in like 2 3 weeks is what we're calling compound, and it's
Oh.
essentially a more passive liquidity management for this feature in itself, where when you have this option turned on and deposit your arch into the queue, um, it's basically set it and forget it. When you
Okay.
get swapped against, the feature will automatically start unstaking your S arch, and
Mm.
when it's ready to be claimed, it'll claim it and claim your rewards and provide them all back into the queue.
Yeah.
So if you're like a long-term LP and think this is like the right option for your arch liquidity, you can just put it in this essentially passive liquidity management feature
Mm.
and accrue rewards without having to worry about them.
Yeah. Cool. No, love it. Okay, great. So let's quickly now, TJ, run through each of the steps to make sure, for users who just
Make sure it
like to
works.
follow. Yeah, and users who like to follow along,
Yeah.
especially if it's first time using it. So we'll go through the staking function where you stake. there's no minimum here, is there, TJ? So
Nope.
great. Okay, so I put 10 arch. You can see I'm getting back 9.95 because of that rate. So I'm not actually getting less tokens. It's just this is the actual value. So if it was reversed, I should get back 10 Archway minus the fees.
Correct.
So I'm going to hit stake, and you can tell it's just telling me the same information again, which is good. Hit stake. I got to approve that transaction fee. You can see we. Oh, is it so? It's charging
It's
me a whole. Is that correct? Am I looking
Yeah.
at this? Oh,
So yeah, Archway transaction fees right now are a bit higher than I think typical blockchains.
yeah.
If you're using Kepler, you can click on the transaction fee specifically and choose like the low option instead
Mm,
of the average option and pay a bit less. But yeah, I think that's like another thing where if the community decides that these transaction fees are a bit too high,
mm,
then we can have this discussion around the minimum gas fee that's being set by the network, and we can have a governance vote to reduce it if necessary. So, but yeah,
yeah.
I think that's a great call out because definitely when you're utilizing the protocol, be aware of the transaction fee that you're paying. Be aware that if you have 10 Arch tokens, you can't stake all 10 of them. You have to have
Mm,
enough to pay for a transaction fee, and you probably want to have enough to request to unstake if you really need to. So just keep those in mind and have a little bit of a buffer for transactions.
yeah. Okay, good. I approved it. Oh, no, it didn't work completely.
Oh,
Try again.
that notification was for the liquidity. So
Oh, yes, yes,
yeah,
for the earlier one. Okay,
so
okay.
I'm
Let's.
assuming that transaction must have timed out.
Yeah, I think I did two, and that was my mistake. I got a
Okay.
bit trigger happy, so I got no transactions pending, and I'll go through the process 10, and I'm gonna stake. Click stake. Oh, it's gotten even more expensive. Okay, but so in this part, that's not the DApp that is charging that extra. It's actually the network fee that Archway is asking for the transaction.
Yeah, so I think if you utilize other dApps on Archway, this is like a pretty typical
Hmm.
transaction fee. We're obviously working to continually to optimize our protocol so that you're paying less gas. But in general, yes, this is kind of like based on this minimum gas price calculation that is set by the network itself.
Okay. Cool. Great. So that stake, you can see right away my balance for SArch has gone up, and that's it. That's all you have to do. And you now have liquid uh, Archway tokens that you can utilize once more protocols launch, and you can use them there. The unstaking feature, now it's as simple. I'm not going to unstake anything at the moment, but for the sake of, is there a
Yeah,
minimum here, TJ?
there's no minimum.
Yeah.
You definitely don't need to instantly unstake because that will go directly into your wallet.
Yep.
But if you were to do a more traditional unstake option, once that transaction is submitted, you'll actually see at the bottom of the DApp, it'll show how much is like being unstaked. And
Yep.
then once it's ready to claim, you'll be able to see that claim option as well.
Okay. Well, let's see. I'll click on stake. Oh, it's like every time I'm doing something, it's getting higher.
Uh,
Okay.
I'll give you a refund after this tutorial.
It's cool. It's cool. I'm gonna hit. Uh, we'll see it in practice.
Okay.
There you go.
So, yep, now you see that has 10.05 arch on staking. We can't give an exact time date to that
Mm.
because if we start counting down from 25 days, it could be a lot less. You could get them back in 10 days.
Yep.
So that's kind of the decision behind not showing an exact time to unstake. But obviously, once they're unstaked, it'll be in the total unstaked amount with the claim button that you can, essentially get your Arch tokens back. And
Yep. No. Cool.
that's like the gist of it. Yep.
Easy. Easy. Okay. And the next part we've already covered.
We have, and look,
And
you've
and you,
already gained some rewards.
that's right. That's right. What's the block times on Archway?
Uh, 6 seconds, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
That's off the
Don't
top of
quote.
the head. That could be
Okay.
completely wrong.
Okay.
But I believe it's whatever is standard within the Cosmos SDK in general.
Okay. Cool. I think that's pretty solid tutorial. We were very detailed and ran through every scenario, which I wouldn't have done solo. So good stuff,
Yeah,
TJ.
I'll use this as a user feedback tool as well to improve the user experience going forward. So this is good for us as well.
Great, great. Okay, well, we'll stop the tutorial. Is there any closing comments, TJ?
Yeah, I think in general, like if that tutorial didn't make any sense to you, or if you have more questions about the protocol, my suggestion is like the first option would be to visit our documentation. So that would be docs.liquidfinance.xyz, and you can see information on the protocol there and see a bit more detailed explanations. We also have some user guides to help you uh, kind of navigate the app.
Mm.
Along those lines as well, you can obviously join our Discord and ask questions directly there. I'm always on and always willing to answer any questions you may have if you have any feedback. And yeah, I would say just in general, like the best way to learn that I've, at least personally, my favorite way to learn in this industry is just to try out things. You can use like a burner wallet if you're um, don't want to use like a ledger, and you can use like a small amount and just see how things work. You don't have to put
Mm.
in your entire life savings in the protocol. But the best way to become educated in like how these dApps work, other than reading about them, is just going out and utilizing them.
Yep. Completely agree. I live by those words. So
Yeah,
that's how I figure stuff up. All the reading in the world, eventually it's the actual using it and running through the steps that have those aha moments. So
yeah,
completely agree. Look, TJ, really appreciate you coming on the show. I learned a lot, not just about liquid finance. I actually learned a lot about Archway, which was a little bit of a personal agenda for me as well. So thank you. And for everyone listening, just want to say, not financial advice. You know, we're just I'm bringing this content from an educational uh, purposes for context as well. And TJ is obviously their team. They're building things to enable users to do cool stuff with their assets on the blockchain. So yeah, but make sure you're doing your own research and understanding how things work before you use these protocols. But apart from that, like, share, subscribe. TJ, thank you again. We'll have you on the show soon when your next, alpha drop that you gave us and you're ready to launch something.
yeah, of course. And if you're in the Archway community watching, make sure to, like Fez says, give him a follow, give him a subscribe. And if you're building, reach out to Fez and maybe he'll do another tutorial for your protocol as well. So
100% tutorial. Let's get you on the show and do an interview as well so that everyone can learn some of the cool stuff that's being built on Archway. TJ, chat soon. Take care.
yep, thanks, Fez.